Hey, what's going on, everyone? Jason from Clocked here, and so on this channel, I've done a few videos on, let's say, Metroid, especially Metroid Prime, and the recent Metroid Dread, and also the recent remake. I suppose it reminds us all once again about how exciting peak graphical Nintendo can be, and how they, unlike many other companies, still have so many chances and so much potential to keep wowing us graphically with new entries to their long-standing IPs. The beloved Nintendo IPs, which even after being a fan for over 30 years, keep me, well, I say 30 years, it's going to be more than that. I probably started gaming when I was around 5 years old. I'm like 42 now. But, but basically, it keeps me coming back and loving every second of the Nintendo goodness we're treated to when we see these great looking Nintendo games. But I feel there's this misconception going around, or that has always been around for a long time, where some people feel that many of us long-time Nintendo fans love to happily sit in what I term as Wii graphical Nintendo. As we know, during the rise of HD gaming, Nintendo decided to stop going toe-to-toe, hardware power-wise with the competition, and instead release hardware that was considered by many as graphically inferior. Basically, Nintendo kind of always being a generation graphically behind what everyone else was doing from a polygon pushing point of view. As much as the Wii sold, that generation upset a lot of gamers who wanted the next graphical leap from Nintendo. And as history showed, many of Nintendo's Nintendo and third-party efforts on the Wii were laughed at visually. Next to what the PS3 and Xbox 360 in terms of the other consoles were churning out. The Wii U was Nintendo's first dip into HD gaming, and for many Nintendo fans, this was an incredible time to finally see Nintendo games not just in HD, but also pushing graphically into a world Nintendo had yet to be in. Whether it's games like Mario Kart 8, Pikmin 3, Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, and Xenoblade Chronicles X, as quick examples, from both Nintendo and its partners and other internal studios. They all showed how great Nintendo games could look when Nintendo pushed their IPs. Hell, as an Animal Crossing fan, simply seeing the Animal Crossing Plaza and all of our favorite Animal Crossing characters in HD, made me super happy. But even then, by the time the Wii U came out, both Sony and Microsoft were also dropping their next consoles, with people feeling that the Wii U was graphically sitting in the realms of what the PS3 and Xbox 360 could churn out. This clearly didn't help Nintendo from a third-party software perspective, never mind the wealth of other issues that the Wii U conjured up in people's eyes. But for those Nintendo fans who owned the Wii U, for many Nintendo IPs, we were in Nintendo HD heaven for the first time, and we were mostly happy with how these Nintendo games were looking, and would argue many times how games like Mario Kart 8 and Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze look just as good, if not better, than many of the counterparts on the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, and of course PS3 or whatever. Roll onto the Switch. The Wii U dies with its swan song release of Breath of the Wild, and the Switch is born with the release of Breath of the Wild. Our first mainline, brand new Zelda in HD from Nintendo, a game which on so many levels changed the Zelda series and changed the industry's approach to open world game design and many other design factors. But primarily when Zelda was first shown in HD, not including games like Wind Waker and Twilight Princess HD. Although Wind Waker HD was another game that wowed our Nintendo HD hearts. When Breath of the Wild was first shown, our Nintendo minds were blown the fudgicles away. Never had we seen a game directly from Nintendo first party of this scope and graphical scale. Just never. And this was proven the case when Nintendo confirmed themselves that this was the most expensive game they'd ever made. And funny enough, they'd only need to sell like 2 million copies of Breath of the Wild to break even. 30 million plus copies whatever later, and both Nintendo and Zelda are sitting happy at the top of where every studio would love to be in sales figures and glowing review scores. But one major difference is this generation that I've noticed and even discussed on this channel is the change in course of some Nintendo fans who still mostly very much enjoy Nintendo games, of course, but considering the wake of the PS5 and Series X, the graphical leap between the Switch and the PS5 and the Series X, feels even greater now. And of course we have noticed that many Switch games, especially from third parties, have been struggling to match the graphical output of the Xbox One and PlayStation 4 versions. Which quick examples of large and graphically detailed games like Doom and Doom Eternal and The Witcher 3, etc. All being very impressive for this little device, but ultimately not coming as close in visual quality as competition versions that many people would like. Which let's remember, people. The size of the Nintendo Switch and what it is compared to let's say the size of the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One as they were, and even more so now as the Switch is as the PlayStation 5 and Series X cross over into the Switch generation. And and people certainly it kind of makes me laugh. I always bring this up, but people, didn't have issues when they owned their PlayStation 1, when games like Shadow Man or Rayman 2 appeared on the PlayStation 1 compared to the N64 and Dreamcast, versions, or even when Beyond Good and Evil and Resident Evil 4 came to the PlayStation 2, running, and looking nowhere near as good as their GameCube or Xbox counterparts, but anyway, I digress a bit there. But even ignoring those, those types of games, it seems that many Nintendo players are getting tired of how current HD Nintendo looks, which for the Switch, even though being more capable than the Wii U, is getting games which fundamentally and clear leaps and bounds beyond what the Wii U offered. That's just the reality of it. So in part, we kind of returned to the GameCube and Wii U transition era. Except this time, Nintendo are already in the HD era, but the HD era has grown greatly, past 720p and into the realms of 4K TV setups with HDR, 4K resolutions, higher frame rates, ray tracing, and higher refresh rates, blah blah blah. Although as always, much of that is marketing speak, because 30 FPS and broken games, is still seemingly a popular choice for some developers these days. Now of course there's always the hidden truths and nuances about how many of these games and their companies actually reach many of these marketed terms, like I just jested. But still, here we are, and even seeing a somewhat smaller title like let's just say Kena or Kina, or however you pronounce that girl's name, Bridge of Spirits, have an almost somewhat Pixar, like graphical fidelity to it, just visually, just to give it that feel. It's hard not to wish, for many of our Nintendo games to look like this. I understand that, and I also desire that, like many other regular gamers. If you bump across any Nintendo fan who says that they don't care if their Zeldas or Marios never end up looking, as rich and graphically intensive, let's say, as the latest Ratchet and Clanks or Kena Bridge of Spirits, in terms of graphical fidelity, or they are happy to stay with Zelda games looking like Breath of the Wild forever, then they are lying. We all love great looking games. It's as simple as that. And no matter how much of an old school gamer you might be, like me, we all love to see video games evolve graphically and technically, bringing new flavor and visuals to the games we play. Do you honestly believe that there are Nintendo fans out there that would still want their 3D Nintendo games looking and running like the N64? The N64 is my favorite console ever, with the Sega Saturn coming very close. And even I was thrilled and hyped to see how GameCube games looked, and certainly wouldn't want Nintendo's next console after the GameCube to return to N64-like graphics because of some crazed Nintendo innovation idea or some, innate nostalgia desire to, stay in my current peak gaming era of the 90s or whatever. As with all things in life, we keep moving forwards. We have to keep moving forwards no matter what, always hoping for the better in the future, whilst remembering the past, both good and bad. This has nothing to do with the wishful, reminiscent desire to recapture the feel of old eras through visuals. This is all about wanting Nintendo to not sit still for too long in any given area when it's clear that things have truly reached a peak. Something which I spoke about in another video where I said the N64 was literally bursting at the seams by the time games like Perfect Dark and Turok 3 and Conker's Bad Fur Day released. That console could literally do no more without blowing up. Now for me, if Nintendo's next console after the Switch doesn't push relatively far past where we've graphically fundamentally been since 2012 with Nintendo hardware, then yes, I feel I'll be disappointed, somewhat disappointed. I still personally feel that the Switch can still wow us with some more entries in beloved titles, and would still 100% accept a new 3D Mario looking like Mario Odyssey. We've got a new Pikmin which looks incredible to me, and if Nintendo dropped another Star Fox as another example, then I'd be a happy bunny. And of course there are the Nintendo games that haven't even been in HD before, like a full 3D Donkey Kong, and an F-Zero. And I'm not talking about F-Zero 99. A new Wave Race. Whether it's I don't know, Pilot Wings. I always see all these games. A Wario Land, a Wario World, a Golden Sun. Although I think Golden Sun is long gone. A 1080 Snowboard and his examples. These are games that we have still yet to see from Nintendo in HD. That alone is still crazy exciting for me, even on Switch hardware. But then we have something like Metroid Prime 4, a game many Nintendo fans are still worrying about. But since the release of Metroid Prime Remastered, it's clear that under the right developers, the Switch can make those genres, I suppose, less best represented, graphically on the Switch. Even though there is some good stuff, good-looking first-person shooters on the Switch, especially like Alien Isolation and stuff. Like I said, there are still those developers who can, if you just with the right with the right developer, games could just in general on any piece of hardware look fantastic. Look just like what we imagined or desired them to look like in HD from the first time from Nintendo. Prime Remastered is the recent perfect example of a peak graphical Nintendo blowing our socks off. And us as Nintendo fans wanting even more. I think most people felt this with Metroid Dread as another example, when some people weren't too thrilled when I first saw Dread, perhaps it was a trailer, I don't know. But that game in motion, and that game, visually, to me that's just peak. Metroid in 2.5D, it looks stunning, and to have that for the first time, I can't be comparing it to other companies doing other things. This is the first time from Nintendo. That's always been my mindset. During the Wii era, many of us sided with Nintendo and accepted the stalemate in the graphical grunt department, and further embraced gameplay and control innovation. The marketing power of both Sony and Microsoft was and still is staggering. And this affected not just Nintendo, but the industry as a whole, and what consumers believed they wanted from their products, even if that meant, although, of course, I suppose, even if that meant and not desired, of other studios not being able to keep up or deliver on the continuous desire for better looking games. The industry has been rocked in ways I think people forget and don't realize, because everyone was just trying to push for the peak of technology. It's not possible in this field. The problem now is the Wii era is long over, and Nintendo, for all intents and purposes, never managed to recapture that innovation over graphical grunt mentality again with many gamers. I say with gamers this time, but I don't feel like they've done it with the general public. Not with the Wii U, and you could I could argue perhaps even less with the Switch. Perhaps. But as we can clearly see, the Switch has been a staggering success. Based off the very notion of playing console quality games on the go in a great form factor, which in terms of innovation and accessibility has brought back the so-called gamer crowd. But not so much the Blue Ocean, mum, dad, nan, granddad, Wii and DS crowd. But as per the conversation, as time has gone on, graphically the games on the Switch are having less impact on many gamers. Not so much myself, because I'm looking at games like Pikmin 4, Tears of the Kingdom, Mario Wonder, Metroid Prime Remastered, and I'm still in Nintendo HD heaven. But still, if you're in these YouTube streets and social media streets, many have been begging for that Switch Pro since the Switch launched. Something which has bugged me since get-go. I had a massive rant on the Juices Loose podcast today. A massive fanboy rant, but I do believe that there's that's where I do believe that's where most of the grief is coming from, from social media and the gaming press, because as a console, the Switch is on the path to becoming the greatest selling console of all time. So it's clearly doing something right, way more than how many polygons it can push when compared to its competition. Even if the competition says that Nintendo aren't the competition because they're doing their own thing, I suppose, being selling the most consoles and the most games, and many times being a king of it, where the other console manufacturers are failing us all those when compared to the sales of the Nintendo Switch. But anyway, it's a bit of a long one here. But what are your thoughts? I'll always, let me stress this, because this was the whole point of this conversation. I'll always desire peak graphical Nintendo. Always desired it. When I jumped onto SNES, we would all see Mario 64 for the first time at Wave Race, and everything blew our minds away. When I left the N64, we first saw Rogue Squadron. I mentioned this before. And other people who were there at that time. It literally looked like Star Wars 1, A New Hope, in real time to us. I still think Rogue Squadron is graphically one of the most impressive games ever made for a piece of hardware. One of the best launch titles ever made. It's a stunning game, and that stuff blew us where we wanted more of that. Then I saw Wave Race Blue Storm. I was like, whoa! We always want that. And I've been getting that with the Nintendo Switch and the Wii U. And, you know, I do now want Nintendo now to make that next leap. It's, you know, it's obviously for graphics, you know, for you know, we, like I said, we all love great looking games. We all love it. I want to see what else they can do now, because, you know, when it comes to like games like, you know, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, I think, you know, you can feel that with the Switch now. You know, I think it's almost there, but that's just coming from Nintendo. You know, how many other developers with their own IPs have reached that scale? You know, and just with the Switch, you know, not many. Hardly any. You know, so you're only seeing it from Nintendo, and it just goes back to that old hardware thing of a console creaking at the seams. You know, Tears of the Kingdom fundamentally isn't creaking at the seams. It's doing a lot. It looks great, it plays great, it's doing a lot, but it's not creaking at the seams like a Perfect Dark or a Conker's Bad Fur Day. Not that I want my games to get to that level anymore. You know, I'm beyond that. I don't want games to be running that poor anymore. But, you know, but it's just a demonstration of where games and where consoles truly were pushed to the max when developers wanted to max out the system. And we accepted it back then because it was all the norm. You know, it was the norm. And I think that in part, you know, made me and many others in some ways, and I say this in quotations, you know, not you know, beaten at the chest or anything here. It kind of made us, I won't say better gamers, but more acceptable. More, we appreciated consoles and games and the technical side and the graphical side more. I feel a lot more than what is being cultivated into today's modern gaming scene by the likes of you know, the Sonys of the world, and, you know, the EAs and all these companies who want to try to push this peak narrative of whatever, you know. But, you know, I just you know, I'll always desire peak graphical Nintendo, you know, but for whatever amount of time, as long as their games continue to visually please me while showing progress and not sitting still for too long, then I can, you know, happily, then I can sit happy and concentrate on just playing the games, you know, like I'm enjoying Mario Wonder right now, you know, like Tears of the Kingdom. I mean, honestly, how can anyone say that Tears of the Kingdom looked visually trash? I just don't get it. Thanks for listening. Take care all, and peace.